The only person ever to bring about a legal prosecution against possible perpetrators of the assassination was New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison, the subject of Oliver Stone's famous movie starring Kevin Costner. The subject of that prosecution, as Garrison said, and as Stone points out in the movie, was just a toehold on the greater conspiracy. And parts of Garrison's investigation never made it to trial and never appeared in the movie. This is why you've not heard Fred Crisman's name. The most significant of these was the identity of the Grassy Knoll shooter, a man named Fred Crisman, according to Garrison. Crisman's name, as I mentioned, was known to people in the UFO research community as a witness to, witness to this event. The Maury Island case. This story begins on July 21st, 1947, 3 days before what is widely regarded as the first modern UFO event, Kenneth Arnold's sightings over Mount Rainier. Out along the shore of the bay around Maury Island, let me check my slides here. Along Maury Island near Tacoma, Washington, a man named Harold Dahl was in a lumber salvage boat called the North Queen, and his son and his son's dog and two other people, when the sky above them, in the sky above them at about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, appeared 6 flying saucers, one wobbling in the middle and 5 surrounding it at an elevation of about 2,000 feet. 20-foot saucers, kind of flattened in the middle, concave, not convex. Dahl said that they were gold and silver, and they shined like a Buick dashboard surrounded by potholes. Inside the bottom interior of the donut, each one had a dark portal that spun around. All of this was done in complete silence and went on long enough for the boat to kind of back off and to hit shore. The middle saucer wobbled. This is obviously no pictures. There was a comic book account, so just to illustrate. The middle saucer wobbled. And then it dropped down about 200 feet from the others. It dropped another 500 feet and stopped wobbling before one of the circling saucers broke formation, flew down, touched the other one, and became still itself. Dahl said that it looked like that one was giving assistance to the other one that had just been wobbling. The saucers started spewing out 2 different substances, a black one and a white one. The central saucer started releasing the white stuff, which Dahl described as a thin, white newspaper-like metal that more or less floated into the bay. But the second substance turned out to be a bit more dangerous. This was a black material that Dahl described as similar to lava rock. The chunks of it that fell into the bay were so hot that they caused steam to rise. Pieces started dropping on the crew, and they all ran for cover. Dahl's son, Charles, was struck by a piece of this, and it severely wounded him in his arm. Another chunk of it killed the dog. Dahl doesn't really say how long all of this took to occur, but after the saucers took off, he and his crew threw the dog's carcass into the water and collected samples of both the white and the black substances. They took off, kind of saying to each other, what the heck was that? But also anxious to go somewhere and get medical treatment for the younger Dahl, Charles. And Charles Dahl would later have a bizarre set of circumstances fall upon him, which later in part would lead Harold Dahl to make the false claim that this was all a hoax. The thing of significance here is where Harold Dahl immediately took his story about the saucers, and that was to this person, Fred Crisman. Stuck a bit. Sorry. I'm having a computer glitch, guys. Thank you. Mystery besets Crisman's story from the beginning. Supposedly, Harold Dahl went to him to tell him about the Maury Island saucers because he viewed Crisman as his boss in this lumber salvage operation. And actually the way that works is what happens with trees that are cut down. They're sent through waterways, and every once in a while a log will break loose and not make it to its final destination. All those trees are branded. And what these guys were doing out in the harbor is that catching the loose logs, the ones that break free, if they pull them back and give them back to the lumber company that cut them, they get a reward. That was their job. But the historic record, though, shows that the patrol boat called the North Queen, a 1942 fishing boat that had been converted to a minesweeper during World War II, was actually registered in Dahl's name, not in Crisman's name. So the idea that Crisman was his boss is already kind of mysterious. As Dahl had expected when he told his story to Crisman, Crisman thought Dahl and his crew had been drunk when they saw the saucer incident. But since Dahl had samples of the slag they had collected, as proof, Crisman decided to go and take a look himself. As he was looking it over, he had a sighting of his own, and this was a donut-shaped craft, like the ones that Dahl described, but different in that it had no squashed look, according to Crisman's report. It was convex, not concave. So Crisman collected his own samples of the slag material at that point, and then he left. Crisman first appears in the historic record a year earlier, when he is quoted extensively in the September 1946 issue of Harper's Magazine in an article about the first post-war World Science Fiction Convention. After that came out, Crisman wrote a nasty letter to Amazing Stories, a pulp magazine, complaining that Harper's had dismissed what he had to say as science fiction, when in fact he had told them about experiences that he considered to be quite real. Those experiences, however, had nothing to do with flying saucers. Flying saucers and the UFO craze in America were still a month in the future. The imagery of flying saucers began in earnest in American popular culture in the late 1940s, just after the first modern wave of sightings, and with the help of pulp magazines like this one, Fate, which actually, of course, still exists today. This is the first issue, published in 1948, by the same person who published Fred Crisman's angry response to the Harper's Magazine article. And that would be this guy, Ray Palmer. That's kind of dark, sorry, there's not a lot of good photos of him. Through Fate, Amazing Stories, and other pulp magazines of that sort, Ray Palmer both helped promote flying saucers and took advantage of the popular interest in them, as did many other pulp magazine publishers of the time. Fred Crisman was one such reader. In his letter to Amazing Stories, he claimed that he had been zapped by a laser while battling these evil creatures in a cave in Burma, creatures called the Deros. And this gets into the Shaver mystery stories that Palmer was promoting. Crisman was a part of that. But for some reason, Ray Palmer forgot all that when he hired this man to investigate Crisman and Dahl's claims about the Maury Island UFO. Most people should recognize Kenneth Arnold here, whose sighting 3 days after Maury Island began the post-World War II wave of UFO sightings. Ray Palmer read about Arnold in the newspaper and wrote to him offering $200 to investigate the Maury Island case, never once letting on that he had a previous history with Fred Crisman. Arnold was a bounty hunter, of course, having encountered his UFO experience going after a $5,000 reward for the recovery of a C-47 transport plane that had crashed and killed 32 Marines. Could be that the transport collided with the same group of saucers that Arnold witnessed, the same group maybe that Dahl had seen. Maybe the C-47 even damaged the wobbling craft that required repair maneuver over Maury Island. And maybe that craft eventually crashed in Roswell the following month. There are unified saucer theories that suggest this, but actually I have to modify this in discussions with people here. My understanding at the time I did the book was that the Marine transport was never recovered, and so I didn't expect to find any clues here, but I'm told apparently that it was. So obviously I need to make a trip to UFO decks and straighten that up.